Hi there, and welcome to Speak English with Christina, where you'll learn American culture and business know-how to become confident in English. And welcome back for the next part in our mini course. And today's episode is all about how to always have something to say and to hesitate less in conversations. And as always, if you want to activate the subtitles for this video, go ahead and click on that little CC icon. And just a reminder, this is part of our free mini course, which is called Confident Conversation Skills, Small Talk Strategies for Big Success. And it's all about helping you feel more confident in your small talk conversations so that you can, make connections and advance in your career. And if you want to get all of the lessons that I'll send in the future, go ahead and sign up at ChristinaRobuffet.com, and I'll send you a new English lesson every Tuesday, and you'll be a part of our Speak English Ambassador community. And today is part 3 of our mini course, and it's about how to always have something to say and hesitate less in conversations so that you feel more confident and you feel more comfortable. And we're going to look at specifically how to make connections and share personal information in a small talk conversation, because connecting with the other person is the key to, using small talk wisely and having a good small talk conversation. So in this lesson, we're going to look at key vocabulary, discourse markers, and we'll also see what those are exactly. But for now, just know that they are essential if you want to sound relaxed and natural. We'll look at a conversation strategy that is very effective for connecting with the other person, no matter what the topic of conversation. And we'll also look at some cultural insights and the American conversation style of looking for consensus. So let's get into the key vocabulary and the discourse markers. And to start, we will just define, what are discourse markers? They're these little words and phrases that are used in conversations to show reactions, transitions, to show interest, etc. And they are a big part of spoken conversations. Like, according to studies by linguists, 65% of sentences in conversations begin with discourse markers. And something that I've noticed in 15 years of teaching students, adult students, is that very few students use them regularly in their conversation. But, like I said, they are essential if you want to sound natural and friendly. So we're going to look at 5 very common discourse markers and how you can use them in your conversation. We're going to look at actually, well, so anyway, you're kidding, and I know what you mean. And you can see a discourse marker, sometimes it's just a single word, but sometimes it can be a complete sentence. And we're going to look at each one individually. We'll define it, how it works, and I'll give you an example of how you would use it in a small talk conversation. So actually, this modifies or contradicts what the other person said. It's like a polite way of correcting someone. And it does not mean at the moment. In some languages, I know that words that look similar to actually, they mean now or currently or at the moment, but that's a false friend. So in a conversation, let's imagine you're at a conference and someone asks you, is this your first time at the conference? Well, it's not. So you can very nicely correct them and just say, well, actually, this is my 4th year here. So you modify or contradict what the other person says, but of course, in a very natural, polite way. Well, this makes a disagreement more polite. So, for example, someone says, oh, your brother's a policeman. That must be pretty exciting. And in reality, not really. So you would say, well, I think it's more stressful than exciting. So you're politely disagreeing. But the well is also very useful to give you time to think and to find your words. So, for example, someone says, well, what do you think of the new director? And you're not sure what you want to say, you can take a minute to think and, well, he's not too bad, I guess. And that is a very natural way of hesitating to look for your words. So you don't always have to have a response immediately to be natural. So anyway, this is a very smooth way to change the topic, especially useful if you don't want to talk about a subject. So for example, someone wants to talk about politics and they say, "Oh, I can't believe that the president said that." You can acknowledge what they say, like, "Yeah, I know," and then change the topic. "So anyway, got any plans for the weekend?" And it's a very natural, polite way of doing that. And then you're kidding. This is very useful to show a reaction after a coincidence or something surprising that someone says. For example, someone says, "Oh, my daughter went to New York to study English last year." And, oh, it's a coincidence because your son was in New York also. And you could say, "Oh, you're kidding. So did my son, but to study architecture." So that's a good way of, showing a reaction to something. And finally, "I know what you mean." This is a way of saying, "I understand your point of view. I sympathize with you." So imagine you come out of a very long meeting with a colleague, and the colleague is like, "Geez, that was the longest meeting ever." And you can say, "Yeah, I know what you mean. Time for a coffee break." And it just shows that you are sympathizing or that you understand the other person. It's a great way to build a connection. Now, let's look at that conversation strategy for connecting with the other person. So, what you want to do here is to identify things that you have in common. This creates trust, it builds rapport, and it shows that you have a connection together. And in business, this is very important because we want to work with people who share our values. Not necessarily who have the same interests as us, that can help, but it's really more about showing that you have some kind of similar values. And the key to this is to listen to the other person very actively, very attentively, and we'll see why that's important. Because when you're listening, you can hear lots of different things, and you can connect something that they say to your life and show that connection. So let's look at a concrete example. So let's imagine you are in a conversation. Someone says, "Oh, so how was your vacation?" Very common small talk topic. And your colleague says, "Oh, it was great. We went to Aspen in the Rockies and we tried skiing for the first time." That's hard stuff. Now, we have lots of possibilities to create a connection with this person based on what she just said. We're going to see. So imagine you're saying, okay, so she's talking about travel. I can talk about travel and, oh, coincidence, I went to the Rockies in the past as well. Now, maybe you didn't, but you can still talk about travel in a more general way. And you can say something like, "Oh, was it fun?" So you're showing interest in the other person. And then you're making a connection. "I visited the Rockies 10 years ago during a trip to the US. I loved it." So even if it was 10 years ago, you didn't go skiing specifically, but you had a trip to the US, and you can share something and you've built a connection with that person. Now, let's look at another way that you can find a different topic of conversation. We don't change what the other person says, but we say, "Oh, I can talk about skiing. I tried that one time as well. There's something we have in common." And you say, "I know what you mean." So I understand when you say skiing is difficult. I know what you mean. I tried one time in the Alps and I fell all the time, but it was lots of fun. So again, showing a connection to some kind of activity that you have in common. And let's look at another way that you can find another topic of conversation just in that same thing that your colleague said. Okay, I haven't been to the Rockies. I haven't traveled to the US. I don't like skiing, but I can talk about sports in general. And so you can say, oh, that sounds like fun. I love doing things outdoors, but I've never been skiing. How was it? So again, you found something in common. It's quite general. This is true, but that is totally fine. You're talking about sports and being outdoors. And you're also putting the person, in a position where you want to listen to them because you've asked them to describe and share their experience with you. And I think especially today, people don't listen to each other enough. And so when someone asks you a question and they really want to hear your answer, that just builds a great connection. So, the important thing in that technique is to listen and to connect what the other person says to your life in any way that you can. Even if it's just, oh, I've never done that. What is it like? That's connecting it to your life. And you can ask questions and then, of course, listen to their answer. Show interest in the other person. So next, let's look at cultural insights and looking for consensus. In the US, in small talk, we tend to look for connections, to look for similarities, to try to find consensus. Maybe polite disagreement, perhaps, but we don't try to provoke people with controversial topics or ideas, at least not in small talk and not in the early stages, not before you have built a connection with the person and you know them a little better. So you want to stay with some, safe topics, at least in the beginning. And the more you get to know the person, the stronger your connections, the more you can get into hot topics, let's say. Things like U.S. foreign policy and wars, the gap between the rich and the poor in the U.S., U.S. domestic politics, the growing power of what we call GAFA. This is Google, Amazon, Facebook, and not Amazon twice. That should be Apple. Sorry about that. Guns and violence and the role that those have in American society. These, are considered interesting to discuss in a lot of cultures. And you may, genuinely want to take advantage of having an American there to ask about this and get their perspective. But these can be divisive and controversial topics, so you want to build that relationship first. Like, don't start the conversation like, oh, what do you think of President Trump? I've had so many people say like, oh, you're American. Nice to meet you. What do you think about Trump? And I'm like, I don't want to get into this right now. I don't want to argue about politics yet. Let's get to know each other a little bit. So you've got to build that relationship first. And this is really part of, I guess, the American logic of conversation. For better or for worse, let's say. It's what it is. But we do tend to try to avoid confrontation that can damage a personal or professional relationship. And like I said, you have to first find the connections and the reasons to relate to the other person and to build and strengthen those connections. And when you've connected on the things that you have in common, then you can address the sensitive topics because they are interesting, and it is interesting to get a different person's perspective, but to do it carefully after you've got those other connections in place. So here's the recap for today on how to always have things to say. Use those discourse markers to sound natural, but also to give you time to think in a very natural way. Connect with others by listening and finding things in common. And remember that many Americans look for consensus and agreement to build relationships before discussing sensitive topics, if they discuss them at all. Now, I have a question for you. Talking about topics of conversation, what is one topic of conversation that you need more vocabulary for, that you just really feel stuck when the conversation turns to that topic. Share your suggestions with me in the comments, and then I can make lots of videos on that vocabulary. And if you are, feel like you want to become more confident and better at conversations in English, I've got a very special offer that is going to start on Wednesday, November 13th on a new course, an updated course that's called American English Confident Conversation Skills. This was the course formerly called Successful Small Talk, but we're updating it, we're adding new materials, and so we're also changing the title to reflect that. And on Wednesday, November 13th, that special offer, you will be able to get the online course, American English Confident Conversation Skills, and a bonus of 2 months of live conversation practice in my Faster Fluency Conversation Club. Normally, that package together would be 395 euros, but we're doing a very special offer. You can get it for only 197 euros. It's like 50% off almost that package. So I want to help you to become more confident. I want to help you to become better at conversation in English. And for me to do that, I need you to go and sign up at ChristinaRobofe.com so that I can send you that special offer, and also I can send you a free English lesson every week. All right, that's it for today. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you next time.